Kama.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity. Mr. Chair, this is my first call on this bill, so I want to acknowledge all members on the Transport and Industrial Select Committee, and I especially want to acknowledge the Minister for his work on this bill and the Chairperson, Jonathan Young. Mr. Chair, I also want to thank all submitters for their input and the effort they have put in helping us shape this bill. Mr. Chair, in Part 3, the amendments recommended by the majority of the Select Committee, they were thoroughly discussed in the Select Committee, and those recommendations are made after taking into consideration all aspects of various submissions that we received. And Mr. Chair, once this legislation goes through, it's going to be applicable on all workplaces, so we need to think wider. And Mr. Chair, workplace safety can be achieved by implementing safe work practices and not by adding compliance cost on businesses. And keeping safe at work is in everyone's interest. And Mr. Chair, the argument from the opposition that worker participation is not enough, that's underestimating worker participation in work-safe practices and health and safety, Mr. Chair. And workplace health and safety is important. No one is denying that. And we have a serious rate of injuries, including fatal injuries at workplace here in New Zealand. No one is denying that too. And that's why, Mr. Chair, this government is working hard and is investing significantly to reduce workplace injuries, and this bill is part of that work. This bill is to update, to clarify, and to simplify the law to focus on high-risk areas. It's about getting the balance right. Mr. Chair, this does not mean that low-risk businesses are not required to have any health and safety regime. Low-risk businesses, they are required to have worker participation. They will have their routine health and safety built in their system. But Mr. Chair, they are required to have safe work practices. They are not exempt from following health and safety legislation. Mr. Chair, for workplace health and safety, worker engagement and participation is important, and it is important to differentiate between high-risk and low-risk businesses. And the amendments in worker engagement and participation are about making the bill practical for different business types. So, Mr. Chair, Clause 65, which is amended by inserting a new subclause 3 to make things clear for high-risk versus low-risk small businesses, is the right thing to do. High-risk sectors and industries are specified by the Minister, and the list of high-risk industries was based on set criteria and data looking at the rates of injury in that industry, the rate of fatality in that industry, or businesses with the potential for a catastrophic event to occur. And Mr. Chair, that is right to do. It is important that we differentiate businesses. We differentiate low risk businesses versus high risk businesses before we go out and create more compliances for businesses. Any PCBU with less than 20 workers, and if that business is a low risk profile business, can refuse to establish a health and safety committee on the basis that they have a satisfactory system where they have worker participation practices at workplace. And Mr. Chair, it's important to have worker participations because sometimes employers, they don't have hands-on experience what's happening on the floor. Workers, they have more experience and they can contribute more to health and safety practices. And it also gives the opportunity to workers to understand how health and safety is important at workplace, how it's important to look after themselves and also important to look after their colleagues. And Mr. Chair, this side of the House believes that we need to look after our businesses in the right way. We want to make sure that our businesses survive and we are not putting any unnecessary burden on our businesses. And our target is to reduce number of injuries. So we need to target the kind of businesses where injuries are happening. It's no point increasing compliance for businesses where there are no injuries or low number of injuries happening. So, Mr. Chair, we want to encourage competition in the economy. And we are saying that worker participation is going to be there. They have to follow health and safety, but it's all about having health and safety rep and health and safety committee. That's the difference for small businesses with less than